Welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette, featuring sysadmin expert Don Pizzette, security specialist Daniel Lowry, and Peter.
Hello and welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, and I'm joined by the namesake of the show, Mr. Don Pizzette. Don, how's it going today?
It is going great. I've managed to show up and be sober for the podcast.
Minimum requirements as always.
Yeah, it's really hitting the highlights today. Huh?
Daniel, how are you?
I'm very well. I mean, I'm basking in the glow of Don's non-drunkenness. So.
Fantastic. And we are joined today by a very special guest, Jorge Negrón-DeJesús, who is the inventor of AWS. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm reading that wrong. No. AWS expert is what it actually says here. How you doing, Jorge?
Thank you, SME. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
You're an old friend of ours. You've been down to the studios here before and actually filmed some content for Amazon here. So it's we were just saying it's been a year since we've seen you because you were here like the last flight out before the pandemic, kind of like the last flight out of Saigon. Is I think the last.
Absolutely. We bid farewell to the world as we know it together, and I'm honored to have done it with the ITPro.tv crew.
Yeah, I can't think of a worse party to go out and hanging out with us. But well, let's jump in and get to know you for those that don't know you yet in our first segment, which is rapid fire questions.
Who do you work for?
What's new?
Who are you?
What's happening?
What's wrong with you?
All right, Jorge. In this segment, what we're going to do is throw some rapid-fire questions at you. You'll see a little timer appear on the left side of your screen. You'll have approximately 1 minute to answer each question. If you take too long, Peter will buzz you, like that, and then we'll move on to the next question. So the first question is going to come at you from Peter himself.
All right, so we kind of mentioned the AWS Academy. That's what you were here for back a year ago. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is? That's actually part of Amazon, correct?
Absolutely. AWS Academy is the part of AWS training and certification that focuses on colleges and universities. We develop our own curriculum. We maintain it ourselves. It's curriculum geared towards college students. And the program focuses in empowering college educators to be able to pass forward this curriculum. We save them the time of maintenance, the time of refreshments. We train them. They become accredited instructors. And then thereafter, they basically teach the classes to their students. This is part of the more general education to workforce effort. And the approach is simply to empower these students to be able to exit one hand with their school diploma and another hand, AWS knowledge and certification with the intent to land them into particular opportunities that continue to go unfilled due to the high demand of cloud computing adoption.
Now, I've been doing technical training for quite some time, 20 years now, and I'm always curious with other people that do training, how they got into that as their line of work. You know, I've met you, Jorge. I know you're a really sharp guy. You've got a lot of knowledge. You've got multiple degrees. You could easily be a developer anywhere you wanted to be. Obviously, supporting cloud infrastructure is not a problem. So what is it that made you kind of gravitate towards becoming a trainer?
I inherited from my parents. My grandparents were educators. My parents are educators. Despite having careers in law and a number of other disciplines, I became an engineer by trade, bachelor's degree, electrical engineering. I took my master's degree in computer science. More often than not, I found myself having to explain to executives, the technicalities of the issues that a particular project entailed. I learned that I loved it. I learned that I was actually good at it and it came natural. So in about 2006, I decided to merge the two, my education, my newfound passion for teaching, and I became a technical trainer. And I've been doing it ever since then, more recently as technical program manager of AWS Academy, standing in front of college professors, PhDs, grad students, being able to answer any questions they throw my way, being humble enough to say, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to get you the answer, before the end of the day. And usually that was good enough. So I'm very thrilled to have done that. I continue to do it to this day.
That's super awesome, Jorge. I love those kind of stories where you're just like, I did this and then I did that. And all of a sudden I took all that stuff and I wrapped it up in a ball and now I do this. And it's kind of awesome. It's kind of fun. And you ended up landing in that apparently an AWS space. So what was that? How did that happen? And why is it that AWS is the certifications that you feel are relevant or are important?
Well, in this particular case, the AWS certification represents independent verification of your AWS expertise. These are exams that are very hard, and that's because they're prepared by subject matter experts, both practicing in the industry and internal to AWS. The idea here is to verify that you can fulfill a particular role, whether it's architect, developer, or system operators, even some of the specialty certifications. The idea there is that you have the minimum knowledge to be able to perform that particular role without causing any damage, without leaving any major holes or any major omissions in your performance. So these are scenario-based questions intended to be able to verify not only the breadth of your of scope of your knowledge, but also they try to test the depthness. You know, they're considered hard because they put you a scenario, they give you a requirement, you look at the answers, and if you don't really know what you're talking about, a lot of the answers are going to appear to satisfy the requirement, but guaranteed only one of them is actually going to be able to do what is being requested. So they're considered hard exams. That's why you see people investing time, investing money in training and preparing. But once you get it, there are dozens of articles that you can look up. People hire based just on certifications. They don't put you through a grueling technical interview. And it does have an impact on the potential outcome in terms of salary once you obtain them.
So AWS Academy is preparing people to get jobs, administering an AWS instance at a company or things like that. What about the people that actually want to work at Amazon? You've had that experience. How do you prepare for a job at AWS, actually for AWS?
You asking for a friend?
Yeah.
That's a common question, right? It actually happens a lot. I break it usually into 3 steps. The first one, you have to love what you do. If you've done it for someone else and you love what you do, you're definitely a good candidate for AWS. You can look on the jobs board, see positions that calibrate to your experience and go at it. There's a second side to that, which is, if you're a college recent graduate, or if you are about to graduate, you can always go, well, I haven't done for anybody except for my project. So in that case, if you're fresh out, there are internship opportunities. There's also a 48-week residency program called AWS Tech U, which will hire you and train you for 48 weeks before you commit to a specific set of responsibilities. And that is basically an elite program. You need to be a great student, outstanding student. You need to be smart and intelligent about what you're talking about in terms of your college experience. But if you get hired by TechU for 48 weeks, you're going to be an AWS employee circling through different teams, watching what they do, being mentored, shadowing. And then after 48 weeks, then you commit to a particular job role. So there's an opportunity here for everybody. It's not a chicken and the egg problem. How do I get hired by AWS if I have no experience? Well, if you have the proper preparation, you definitely are given an opportunity, and you could be an intern, or you can actually join this AWS TechU program and become a full-time employee.
I had a guy yell that to me the other day out of his car. Tech you, I think is what he said. So he must have
Sounds about right.
Yeah, he must have been advertising that.
AWS employee.
I didn't know what he was talking about.
He saw potential.
Yeah, hey, Tech you.
Yeah.
Hey, you too, buddy. That's there. So I'll look into that. Well, we want to, while we have you here and your expertise on all things cloud, we want to jump into our next segment for this week and talk about an article in Science and Tech News.
Please.
Stay tuned for Science and Technology. And now, back to the anchor desk.
All right, so the article we're looking at here is from searchcloudsecurity.techtarget.com, long domain. How cloud monitoring dashboards improve security operations. So when we talk about cloud monitoring dashboards, are those things that are baked in to things like AWS and Google Cloud, or are these third-party solutions you think that are important for people to get their hands on?
There are a number of third-party solutions that are very effective. We're not taking down anything like that. However, AWS has over a dozen automated security services. Something like Amazon Inspector, for example, looks inside a virtual machine and tries to highlight for you whether you're using components with a particular vulnerability and highlights it for you. The dozens of services that AWS provides regarding security, they have different formats, they generate different findings. More recently, there's been a service called AWS Security Hub, whose job is to try to consolidate all of these results into a single dashboard, create a unified type of format so that you don't have to do the conversion yourself. And then it integrates with Amazon CloudWatch events, now under a different name, for you to be able to take corrective action. You can even dispatch your findings over to a ticketing system in order for it to be remediated and followed through upon it. So the complexity of security services now has gotten into the point where a unified approach is necessary. And Security Hub will give you a central point dashboard with prefabricated rules. We used to train a lot into how to properly secure an AWS account, including MFA, choose a proper password length. I mean, simple stuff like that. They're not obvious to everybody. And now there are tools that will automate that, pre-programmed, prefabricated functionality that simply puts it on your dashboard. Hey, you have a score of 80%, you have a score of 90% in your basic implementation. If you're going to use multi-account type of topology, then these are the items that you need to remediate. So it's becoming simpler by virtue of machine learning and by virtue of consolidating the variety of results from the different dashboards. Amazon Macy, for example, comes into play. Guard Duty, for example, Inspector for virtual machines, AWS Access Security Analyzer. So there are dozens of security-related services that now consolidate into Security Hub, giving you a single point of access for you to be able to dispatch an event through AWS Lambda or step functions, or simply just dispatch it to a ticketing system in order for a team to be able to take the necessary corrective action. So security should no longer be a mystery.
You know, one challenge that I always ran into was that I found when I was dealing with one service, the monitoring dashboards that were built in were great. So if I was doing EC2 instances, then there was plenty of CloudWatch monitoring right there for me, and it was all active, and that was that. Or if I was dealing with S3 buckets or Lambda functions. But when I got a little more complex, right, when I got into like a stack, so I had a Lambda function writing to an S3 bucket with a load balancer and all these different components, that the dashboard didn't really understand how all those components fit together. So I might be having issues, but it doesn't nail it down. So has that problem been solved? Does it, like, via machine learning is kind of a magic black box word. Is it able to figure out the relationships between the services?
It's able to do that, actually. In fact, it comes with prefabricated built-in rules for the AWS security best practices. It also has the AWS benchmarks for best practices. And now there's even a package for PCI compliance. So it is able to understand the results of the variety of services. It's able to understand the format of them. It's even able to establish the relationship between these findings. They call them insights. So you can actually group them, and then you choose what action to take, whether it's an automated action through a Lambda function or a step function, or simply to be able to dispatch it to a ticketing environment. And more importantly, it integrates with over 50 different security services that are actually made by third-party products. So you're not bound just to the AWS ecosystem. You can also integrate with a significant amount of AWS security services available by third-party that now are able to send their findings to AWS Security Hubs in order for you to have that single dashboard that was such a big ambition before. Hub and spoke architectures are the way that we flatten quadratic complexity. So the moment you have more than three particular data sources actually coming at you, you can do the combinatorics, and you end up with this mathematical expression that is a quadratic complexity equation, n times n minus 1 divided by 2, if you happen to consider the connection bidirectional. And it is well known, the way you flatten that into something that's linear, more approachable, is by provisioning a hub and spoke type topology. And that's where Security Hub comes in. And there are a number of services that actually have used the exact same topology of a hub and spoke to be able to simplify the complexity. Transient gateway comes to mind when doing the idea of VPC peering, for example. When you had more than 3 VPCs, the transient gateway now allows you to stitch together hundreds of VPCs, and from a single point of access, a unified approach. So Security Hub is definitely one of the items that you want to look into. Fresh out of the gate, we no longer have to explain MFA, security implementations. Security Hub, you light it up and it tells you exactly what you need to do. You're doing this well. You need to perhaps take a look at this, and this one is grossly incorrect. Please take action on this sooner more than later.
All right, now you mentioned PCI compliance in there, and I know Amazon itself, the AWS data centers, they are PCI compliant, but our solutions that we deploy on top of it aren't, unless we take the necessary steps. And if you've ever filled out, like Daniel, have you ever done a PCI data survey, security survey?
I have not had the pleasure. So
by the time you get to like page 42, you start going crazy. And when you're at Appendix Z and you're like, all right, what's the next appendix going to be lettered? I'm out of letters. It's a nightmare. So is that process as it's deployed now, if it's doing automated reporting, and if it's basically ensuring or validating my PCI compliance, is that enough? Like, does it churn out the documentation that's necessary for me to put that in front of an auditor and say, oh yeah, I'm PCI compliant?
It is very useful. There are a number of services that are PCI compliant provided by AWS. So you want to definitely investigate that. But there's something called the shared responsibility model, which is that dividing line that AWS defines between what they will take care versus what you need to own. And as you clearly said, your applications and how you implement them, they're definitely your responsibility for them to become PCI compliant. The package that comes with AWS Security Hub will actually assist you in making sure that those guidelines are actually met, whether they're coming in from inside a virtual machine by virtue of Amazon Inspector findings that are coming in, or whether they're simply coming in by virtue of the data that is actually flowing around. A service like Macy, for example, will examine your S3 buckets and try to see if there are any credit cards exposed, any credentials exposed. That would be a major violation of PCI DSS type compliant. Security Hub will definitely highlight them for you. You need to enable the package and then basically allow the different services to do their job and flow the data, flow the traffic. Guard duty, for example, will also try to verify that you're doing things correctly. So you still are responsible for making sure that your application implementation is compliant, but you definitely have now much more sophisticated tools to be able to detect where are your faults and how to take care of them.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like you don't need to be a security expert necessarily to feel secure on Amazon, but that's great. But with speaking of security, with AWS coming up, you've got an event, Reinforce, which is kind of that's a security focused one, right? Reinvent is kind of the general AWS conference, but Reinforce, what does that one focus on specifically?
Absolutely. AWS Reinforce 2021 is going to happen August 24 and 25 in Houston, Texas. And this is a conference that's focused on security and compliance. So attending Reinforce is one of the most effective ways that you're going to be able to find to be able to learn how to secure your workloads using AWS tools or services. And you're going to have AWS subject matter experts. You're going to have industry subject matter experts. And more importantly, you're going to have your peers. Usually when you have a question in a class, not too many people kind of raise their hands. Usually the first person that you go to is the person sitting next to you. Hey, what was that about? And so you have peers, you have AWS internals, AWS external subject matter experts, all of them focusing on compliance and security of your implementations. And this is one of the first conferences that you will be able to attend physically. There will be also an online component to it.
Yeah, people I'm sure will be excited to get back in person for events like that, because that's a lot of fun. So hopefully
they're always a lot of fun. Absolutely. They're always a lot of fun. We miss them, and I'm sure everyone else does. So I'm really glad that it's finally happening.
And who doesn't love Houston in August? So this might be a separate department, but do you know if there's going to be a new season of that Tom Clancy, Jack Ryan show on Amazon Prime, or is that's a whole different side?
That's definitely a whole different side. I have no visibility
that new Tom Clancy movie that they did with Michael B. Jordan?
That was good.
That was good.
Actually, I enjoyed that.
Good flick.
Much. All right. And now we have gone down a rabbit hole. Anything coming up for Prime Day that you want to tell us about? Right, Jorge. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank
You're
you
very
so much
welcome.
for taking the time. Yeah, we appreciate having you on.
My pleasure to be here. Please, anytime, I'll be glad to assist. You guys are one of my favorite training and certification providers that I have seen so far.
Yeah,
thank you.
Definitely next time there's some big AWS scoop, you're going to be the one we call. So be ready. Be by the phone for that.
I'll be glad to, please.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks again, and we're going to take a quick break. Got a lot of news to get to, so stick with us. We'll be right back on Technado with Don Pizzette.
The IT Pro TV app is available for iOS and tvOS. The modern user interface makes navigation easy. Recently watched videos can be found on the home screen, as well as our daily live streams. Choose landscape mode for larger viewing. Access the entire course library by clicking on the play icon. Navigate our content by category, certification, and job role. Learn where you want and when you want as a premium annual member by downloading episodes for offline viewing. Watch on the go and pick up later on any of your favorite devices. So head to the App Store and download the IT Pro TV app.
All right, welcome back to Technado with Don Pizzette. Thank you so much to Jorge for joining us and talking about all the, not just cool stuff at AWS, but specifically security stuff. Got a lot of neat stuff going on, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of people going and getting drunk at AWS Reinforce in Houston.
Why not?
It's been a year since you've been able to get drunk on the company dime.
That's true. It's true. I mean,
I've heard.
yeah.
I've read.
So I hear. Wouldn't know anything about that.
No,
Would you, Don?
You
No.
can, you can take your paycheck and still go get drunk, but that's not official.
Not the same.
thing.
Yeah.
That's like, having to poop on your own time.
I like to take Don's paycheck and get drunk.
Everybody knows that expensed alcohol tastes better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This round's on me.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the news because there's a lot of weird things, strange things going on this week. And our first is from ArsTechnica.com. Let me play some music here. Microsoft is finally killing off Internet Explorer entirely. Internet Explorer lives on in Edge IE mode, LTSC Windows 10, Windows Server, and in all of our hearts.
I love how
I
it
think.
immediately contradicts itself. It's killing it off entirely.
Yeah.
It lives on.
Well, I mean, we've heard this for a while, right? Oh,
Sure.
Internet Explorer's dead. Internet Explorer's dead, but it's still been there where you had to go and find it, basically. But now it's going to be gone.
Yeah, so, over the years, Technado has been running for years now, we've many times announced the end of a particular version of Internet Explorer. So Internet Explorer 9, 10, now 11. Well, this is not just the end of the versions, like the end of a season of a TV show. This is the series finale, right? They've announced there will not be an Internet Explorer 12. It's the end of the line for Internet Explorer. Microsoft has gone all in with Microsoft Edge. But IE11 does hang around a few different ways. In fact, there is a Internet Explorer compatibility mode that's available inside of Edge that sort of lets you do it. If you still have web applications that rely on Silverlight or other BS that some people invested in that, and it's expensive to rebase your code on some new platform. So some of it's out there, but basically Microsoft has said that's it. We're now all in on Microsoft Edge. Now, for me, I had gone to Chrome for a number of years, and then I've recently switched over to Edge. I use it quite a bit and like it. But I was thinking about it. I remember, I don't know if you guys were online then, but back in 1995, when Internet Explorer version 1 came out. So at the time, you didn't have a lot of choices. You had Netscape Navigator and you had Mosaic. Like, those are really the two, and Mosaic was kind of outdated. Well, Microsoft basically took Mosaic and changed it around a little bit, because they borrowed that code base and then turned that into the first version of Internet Explorer.
You didn't
that how
air
they-
quote that.
Yeah.
You're supposed to say borrowed.
Isn't that how they made Windows?
So they did actually license Mosaic. They paid for it.
Oh, that's the
and
difference. Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit different, but basically, when it came out, it was a new web browser, and we didn't have a whole lot of choices back then. And Internet Explorer was kind of neat. And I remember with Windows 98, where Internet Explorer became an integral part of the OS. Like, you couldn't uninstall Internet Explorer; it had to be there.
Non-compete issues, didn't it?
It did, and that was a big deal because they said we can't take it out. It's in the heart of the OS. Even the file browser is now Internet Explorer. You just don't see it. So we've gone from a time where the web browser was the heart and soul of the operating system to now being something they can cast off.
It's an afterthought.
They had a heart transplant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To Edge.
What's the heart and soul of operating system of Windows now?
The recycle bin.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. Good luck.
WSL.
Good luck.
Windows Update.
Good. That's probably more true. Windows Update.
Now, will this happen through a Windows update, where if it's on your computer, it will be taken away for you? Or?
No, they haven't said they're removing it, but they're not going to be. Eventually, they'll stop doing updates to it. And so that's the real thing. Like, it's a security risk. You want to move over to Edge if you haven't already.
And really, the only people that I feel like were still on it were really big corporations that were really glacial slow to move, or government, cases where they said, oh, you have to use this browser. But you've had enough time by this point to know that this is coming to move forward, I would think.
There's still a number of government websites that only work in Internet Explorer. Like, there's companies that just have not updated their infrastructure and kept up with the times.
Colonial Pipeline, right? No.
Oh, yeah. Well, you'd be surprised. You find out these places are running Windows 7,
Right.
and yeah.
Well, there's your problem.
There's your
I
problem.
figured it out.
Listen, we know this works, man. Shut your mouth. That's what I'm using. So
It's worked since 1997.
Right.
And it'll
If it
continue to
ain't
work.
broke, son, it is broken, sir. Shut up.
It's not broke, but it's been hacked 100
Yeah.
times.
I mean, they don't find it to be broken at all.
Yeah, this works for us.
Yeah, I like this.
Dark side's like,
Yeah.
this is great. That's perfect. All right, let's move on to our next article from tomshardware.com. New SSDs have built-in protection against ransomware and data theft. So if they're building something into that, it's like, can they still update it as new security things come up?
Yeah, so Apple kind of started the idea of having these secure enclaves in your hardware, little places where data could be locked away and secured and you're not allowed to touch it, right? So like your Touch ID fingerprints are locked away in a secure enclave. Well, this manufacturer, whose name I've actually forgotten offhand.
Cygent, I think.
Cygent, the leading name in
Yes,
SSD.
that's
The many of you have probably not heard of because they only market to military and government right now. They're just stepping into the consumer space, which is why there was this announcement. What they've done is they've released SSD that has these secure enclaves on it. And it's combined with a software application that you run on your operating system. And if it sees ransomware-like activities, you can have kind of like partitions or little, I think they actually call them panic rooms at one point in the article, that it can panic and say, "Whoop, there's ransomware," and it can lock off the locations where you store your data, making it where they don't get encrypted. Now, your computer's still infected. You still have that problem, but at least your data didn't get encrypted and is irreversibly stored away unless you pay a ransom.
So how do you get to, like, let's say that happens, you get some sort of ransomware hit, the hard drive goes, I'm going to push this off in the secure enclave. How do I then get at that data if I still have the ransomware?
So it's basically like an encrypted volume. You have a key, and they haven't actually released this yet, so I haven't been able to find out whether it's a token-based thing or if it's one of those long, 128-character strings or whatever. But that's basically the way it works, is you have a key that unlocks it, and you're able to get at that data.
And this is useful for things like off-the-shelf kind of ransomware, stuff we know about, signature-based, behavior-based a bit, I guess.
So it's supposed to be doing behavior-based. Yeah. And again, it's the software piece that they haven't showed us yet. They've shown us the hardware, so we know how the hardware works, but the software is still kind of the mystery. So it is monitoring for, when you get ransomware, it goes through and starts encrypting files, which generates a ton of disk I/O. So all it's got to do is monitor for disk I/O. And then if it sees something crawling through the file system, ransomware is pretty much one of the only things that does that. Although I have tripped some alarms with things like, hey, you ever use Beyond Compare?
I have not, but I was thinking of like if I was using like GPG and I started to encrypt a whole section of my files.
Yeah.
It might go, "Oh, what's this?" and think I'm ransomwaring myself.
So
trying to zip up this email.
Yeah, geez, man.
Do you remember back in the old days where, like, if you were running Windows Terminal Server Edition or whatever, you had to tell it, I'm going to put you in install mode, and now I install the software, and then I'll take you out of install mode. Well, that's how this is. If you're about to encrypt a drive, you've got to flip it into a safety mode.
Gotcha.
Do your encryption, and then flip it back. But that's the idea. It's cool. Neat to have it in hardware, though.
No doubt. No doubt. Hey, I'll take any protections I can get my hands on, honestly, because it's a nasty world out there.
Ever since you said panic room, all I can think of is Jodie Foster just keeping an eye on my data for me.
Yeah, but then all your data would be in French.
That's weird.
Yeah. All right, this next one is a weird one to me, so I'm hoping Don and Daniel can put it in perspective. This is from the record.media. Microsoft warns of malware campaign spreading a rat masquerading as ransomware. Now, all I can think of when I see this is like a Trojan horse coming, going, "Hey, are you guys murderers?" No, we're just bank robbers. All right, well, come on in then. So, but it's not really like that. I
thought you were going to go with the '80s hair metal band.
Oh, rat.
Oh, rat. Yeah, this is rat all caps, so that stands for something.
And it's 2 T's, rat.
That's a good
rat
point.
is,
Yeah,
right.
wrong rat. So it's a remote access Trojan, which means that once your computer gets infected by this, somebody has remote access. The ability to potentially access your files, your data, maybe run processes, do remote code execution. Who knows, right? Depends on what the rat is. But in this case, it's masquerading as ransomware. And what they found was, if you've ever seen a machine that's been hit by ransomware, it'll encrypt your documents. And it'll usually stick a different file extension on the end of them so you know that your data has been encrypted. Well, in this case, it does that. So it changes the file extension and adds a .crimson at the end of each file. But it kind of skips the part where it encrypts your files. So if you delete that file extension, your file will open up just fine. It's not actually encrypted. They just changed the extension. So they're not entirely sure why it's doing that, because it could have silently installed the rat and not notified you at all. Like by faking the encryption, it makes it pretty obvious that you've been hit. So it kind of gives it away. So they're debating right now whether this is just a mistake, somebody getting started, my kid's first ransomware project, that kind of thing, or if there's something a little more nefarious going on.
Yeah, because like we see stuff like this when they're pre-staging, they're building their malware, and it's going to do X, Y, or Z functions, and it accidentally gets released, and then we start picking it up on our computers and going, oh, well, it didn't actually do anything. That's because they didn't get that far before it accidentally hit the wild.
Yeah.
So maybe this is like, because I'm pretty sure that .crimson extension is a valid like encryption extension for other malware. So maybe they're, like I said, just staging this up and accidentally went whoopsies, and it made it outside of their little lab computer.
Maybe their antivirus quarantined the library file for encryption, and so the rest of it went fine.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. So let's say I've gotten ransomware, and I pay the bounty, and I get my my stuff back. I know that my computer had been compromised at some point. Is there a process I should take at that point to say, hey, just to make sure there's not something else still on here, or what did they hide here while they were in?
Sure. Once your machine has been infected with a Trojan, a virus, any kind of remote administration, you cannot trust that machine anymore. You need to erase the machine. Do a low-level format of the hard drive, reinstall the operating system. You cannot trust it, and that's because some of these toolkits can be really ingeniously hidden in the operating system where they don't even show up in the process manager or activity monitor or whatever it is you're using to monitor your system. So, some of these are really like the old rootkits, they would get so embedded under the operating system that they were basically invisible.
Yeah. And then you got to have yourself an old Yeller scenario where it's like, come on, boy, I'm going to miss you, but this has to be done. You just go ahead and look out over there in them pretty fields.
Tell me about the rabbits, Daniel.
While I hit format SQL.
Well, I get this really big magnet.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So, yeah, I mean, because there's probably, the weaker malware guys that come up right afterwards and try to see if there's still that same hole there. And
Peter at itpro.tv.
Well, this guy still pays. So.
The other thing you hear about is where somebody pays the ransom, they get the key, they unlock it, they decrypt all their stuff. But if you don't patch whatever it was the attackers used to get in, then you just get reinfected by the same thing. Yeah, it's
a fun game.
It's a fun game. It's a fun back and forth game.
Yeah. Oh, those silly ransomware guys got me again.
All right. Well, fantastic. Our next article is from zdnet.com. I was just making sure.
.do.
Yeah, they didn't get that yet.
ZDNet.zdnet.
Or zdnet.et, like for Ethiopia, maybe they should do that.
Could work.
Do it like us.
Could do like us.
Cyber insurance premiums take-up rates surge, says GAO. And I guess that's not really a surprise because we talk about how pretty much everybody is susceptible to these at some point. So it's just like the premium's got to be high if it's going to support a $5 million ransom.
So as recently as like 10 years ago, cyber insurance was a really new concept, and a lot of companies debated whether or not it was even worthwhile to get it. It was just this idea of why would I get insured if somebody's going to hack us? That's not real damage. It's not like I got to build a new building. Well, over the last decade, people have recognized that an incredible amount of damage can be done. And most of it is not actually damage to your infrastructure, but damage caused by the regulatory penalties, like the GDPR penalties that can be assigned to you and so on. So cyber insurance steps in to fill that void. It also helps to alleviate, like, security professionals are really expensive. So if I want to hire somebody to come and do the digital forensics on my system and all that costs a lot of money. Cyber insurance helps with that. So we're seeing more companies than ever buying cyber insurance, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, there's kind of two problems here. So one problem is it's getting more expensive. The prices are going up. You'd think the prices would kind of stabilize or go down, but they aren't.
Basic economics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other problem is that cyber insurance is a reactionary protection, right? I get hit by malware, whatever, and then I go and I do my insurance claim. It doesn't actually stop the problem. So that means the problem is getting worse. More people are getting hit, and instead of taking measures to prevent getting hit in the first place, they can half-ass their security all they want because they know they got cyber insurance, right?
Well, the insurance company is like, a car insurance company is rewarding you for being a safe driver because they know we're not going to have to pay a premium as much. Are these companies doing the same thing where they're saying, hey, we're gonna support you here, but we want to make sure you're doing A, B, and C
sure.
if you're going to get this rate?
So I love your example of car insurance, right? So I've been with the same insurance company for a long time, so it's been a while. But if you guys remember when you applied for car insurance and they ask you questions, how many miles per day do you drive?
One.
right? So what did you put?
Very few.
I don't actually use my car.
That's what people put. Like, oh, I only drive 3 miles a day. Meanwhile, you got a 100-mile commute every day.
What I meant was at least. You didn't let me finish.
How many people drive your car? Just me. Just me. I never have passengers, right? That's what people put. Now, a cyber insurance company could decline your claim if they find that you did not exercise best practices. But unfortunately, best practices are not well defined in the United States. So they don't have like, you need to be ISO 9000, that's the wrong one. ISO 27001. There we go.
Yeah.
Who cares about 9000? That's business crap. So you need to be
You can do
ISO
whatever you want, your business.
27001 compliant or whatever. Like if they get to that stage, then that's going to encourage companies to do better. Otherwise, the cyber insurance won't cover them.
Yeah, and it's probably just going to keep going up. So if there's incentives to get a lower rates based off of compliance, that's probably going to push them to do those very things. Yeah. Which is funny because you should just be doing them anyway, because that's how you don't get hacked. Just saying.
And, insurance companies, they have actuaries who are the ones who determine the amount of risk the company's exposed to, which ultimately determines the price of the product. And so they're looking at this and saying the risk is getting bigger, our price needs to be higher. So it just shows the danger we're in right now.
So if we can lower the risk, then the price should come down.
They should.
All right.
In theory.
Let's start doing that. It's an interesting idea of, I was talking about this with Ronnie this morning of, you want to be, like, as far as business goes, you want to be agile, you want to be quick, you want to be able to move and pivot and do new things without a lot of encumbrances, but you also don't want to be so quick and nimble that you can do whatever you want without any kind of oversight.
Yep.
And then you get to the point where it's nothing but red tape and you're this giant bureaucratic leviathan where you can't do anything because you can't do, there's too much red tape involved. How do you find that equilibrium between the two worlds where you can still move, but you have a good policy and procedure and you find that perfect space?
In today's world, you just have to take your time. And it's tough, but I'll give you a great example with Apple's M1 processor, right? So Apple launches this new processor, the M1, and all of their hardware is moving over to the M1. It's very exciting. Well, on the Intel processors, we had Spectre and Heartbleed and all these crazy exploits that were all built around the predictive processing that it would do, the multi-threading. Well, is the M1 susceptible to that? Nobody knew because it was like a top secret thing until the day it was released. And so you've got to give it a little time to get out in circulation and let people test against that. You don't want to adopt it day one unless you're willing to accept that risk. Some companies are. If you've got the money in the bank to do it, accept the risk.
Yeah, it's just crazy that we see the gas pipeline. How did they get hacked? Well, they connected it to the internet. We talked about this on the Technado the other day. They're connecting stuff to the internet. We know that this is a dangerous practice, and yet we're still engaging in it. Where's that disconnect, and why is that happening? If we can solve that question, I think we'd be in a safer place.
Because the internet's so fun.
It is indeed. It's the Wild West out there, isn't it?
Anyway, it's a good time to be in the cyber insurance industry.
Yeah, I'm going to start a company.
I think. All right. Well, let's take a look at our next article from TechCrunch.com. Malware caught using a macOS 0 day to secretly take screenshots.
Fake news. Macs don't get 0 days. They don't have malware.
Well,
that's not the
this
case.
is interesting because in the article, not only does it use a 0 day to do the screenshot, it uses 2 other 0 days to bypass a number of protections found in macOS. Normally, if an application tries to take a screenshot of your computer, it has to have specific permission to do that in the security preferences in macOS, or you'll at least get a prompt dialog where you have to authorize it. This one was able to bypass that, and it was able to do a few other things. The main thing it was doing was tampering with Safari, and it would actually install, like once it had its foothold, it would install a kind of a lighter, crippled version of Safari that would allow it to basically transmit everything you did online out to remote servers. This is a really nasty one. I joke about that, but I hear about people every day that use Safari. I don't understand why.
It's the crappiest browser.
Well, Opera. Opera's the crappiest now.
I'll use Opera over Safari.
Even though it like Bitcoin mines in the background.
What are you going to do, right? Some people got to get some money. At least it's not spying on me and sending it back to freaky malware people.
Yeah.
And we can say this because we know now that Internet Explorer has been officially killed.
Yeah. Right? Since that death, it has shifted.
Now the worst.
The ranking.
There's a new crown.
It is called Safari. It's just a junk web browser, man. I just hate using it.
Yeah, it's pretty. It was, like most web browsers, designed to be lightweight. and standards compliant and all that, but it
Garbage.
It's just it's
That's the first thing I do when I like get a new iPhone is make sure Chrome's on there and that's default because it's just a mess.
Now, sadly, I do use Safari on my iPhone.
Whoa.
Now, in this case, we're talking about Safari and macOS.
Sure.
But on the iPhone, and Daniel, you're not an iPhone user, so you don't know this, but Apple will not allow ad blockers to work in anything except Safari. So if you have a Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge on your iPhone, it won't use the ad blocker.
This is why I'm not an Apple fan. Them trying to control what I do doesn't make me very happy.
Yeah.
I want to do whatever the hell I want to do. I paid for the thing.
It's our big marketing lobby that has gotten this.
Well, Apple's motto is you can do whatever you want to do as long as it's exactly what Steve Jobs wanted you to do.
Yeah.
See,
Do
I get
our
that.
kind of
You're
evil.
right. You're right. Yeah.
And if you're a deviant, that once
Weirdo.
yeah, that's your own problem.
Hey, you guys weird. Why would you ever want? It's like a little pocket version of Stack Overflow, right? It's just telling you, why would you want to do that? That's dumb.
Before you know it, you're in a new jumpsuit with some nice shiny tennis shoes, waiting for a comet to fly by.
Sweet. Emasculating yourself, right?
I was going to leave that part off, but yes,
That's probably the more severe part of that whole story.
that's dedication.
Yeah,
right there.
that's really
Pass the Kool-Aid,
believers. Yeah. True believers, right there, my man.
Yeah.
Now, for the record, Daniel and I, not Daniel, sorry, Peter and I are both iPhone users. Daniel, you are not, right?
I am not. Correct. What do I use? I don't know. Linux phone, maybe.
BlackBerry.
I would like to think that Bill Gates' mind control chip that was injected with my vaccine helps to counteract the between the two. I think they neutralize each other. So I'm good.
Sense.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Yeah, gotta get that Google one now. Or was that Moderna? I don't even know.
LG. That's an LG phone for them.
I didn't know Google was in on one of them. I thought it was just Bill Gates.
See that's like what they're trying to spin. So you guys don't even think about them. They had the secret dock, remember, out in San Francisco where they were doing all kinds of secret things that no one knows about?
I heard that Bill Gates was tampering with Moderna, and it was Melinda Gates tampering with Pfizer, and in the divorce you had to pick which one you went with.
Yeah.
And
Johnson & Johnson? That's what the kids get.
Yeah, that's what the kids do.
That's emancipation. That's
All right. Well, none of that made sense, what we were just talking about, which leads us perfectly into our next segment. That makes no sense.
It make no sense. It make no sense. It make no sense. What you talking about, Willis?
All right. So this article comes to us from Creative Block. Is that Block? BLOQ, I think?
That's none of your business.
.com. Adobe defends itself as Photoshop users berate new update. But it's all Apple's fault, guys. So, Don, you picked this, and I'm curious, what makes no sense about this to you?
All right. So a lot of people, you may have noticed that on the internet, people do have a tendency to fixate on little, tiny, minute details and whine like it's the end of the world.
That's dumb as hell. I'm about to go right about it.
So in a recent version of Adobe Photoshop on the newest version of macOS, the Save As functionality has changed and the world has ended. So in the past, if you were editing a PSD file and you wanted to, say, save it as a PNG or a JPEG, you could go to File and Save As, and you could tell it to save it as a JPEG. You can't do that anymore. When you go to choose Save As, you don't have the option to change the file format, and that's because Apple has tightened security around the Save As prompt. It's integrated into macOS, and so Adobe had to remove that functionality. Well, Apple kind of forced them, right?
So make sure I'm hearing you right. Apple's controlling what Adobe can and cannot do.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure we're on the same page.
So Adobe rightly has said, hey, it's not our fault, and Apple kind of made us do it, but people are really reaming Adobe because Adobe's such a terrible company. It's hard to feel like it's not their fault.
Yeah.
But when I saw this, I immediately thought, why is this an issue? Because you just go to File and Export. And then
That's what I was doing
yeah.
for like a PNG, but this is saying you have to hit Save a Copy.
So
right? So there's an extra click.
But
that
that's
was
like
the
a copy
workaround.
of the project, though, right?
Yeah. So I swung by our editor room earlier today to ask them because they work in Photoshop and Premiere stuff every single
Set
day.
a couch on fire, and we're like running around like crazy people.
And sure enough, talking to them, they use the export functionality too. So I don't know who exactly is
doing the Save As
using the
business.
Save As thing, but it's a little change, but it's a a way that you've been able to do it for a long, long time, and people don't like change.
So I totally get that, right? I get like you've got like a workflow, and as soon as someone throws a monkey wrench in your workflow, it's kind of unnerving. I get that. But I also have worked in, help desk space, Don. We've kind of done that before. People get like, here's the thing. If you don't put page breaks in my email signature line, I'm going to set the building on fire, right? It's like, I don't think it's that bad. I mean, I get it's annoying, but let's calm the hell down.
Yeah.
And just change your workflow, set it and forget it, and go back to work.
Well, the big thing is in a year.
Oh, yeah.
When Apple says, "Oh, you don't have to do that anymore," and they say, "Cool, we'll change it back," people are going to be like, "Hold up, where's my save a copy button?" People are just mad at what's current change. I mean, you see this on Facebook
anytime you can complain about Apple, I'm good.
Yeah.
Or any company.
So there's a lot of people that are tweeting about this. Nobody's invoked Hitler yet, so it hasn't reached that stage, but it'll get
Isn't
there.
there a law that says that
sooner or later it'll get there.
It becomes that you are Hitler.
Yeah, it's probably there by the time this episode airs.
I think Hitler uses Photoshop.
Hitler used fireworks, which I used to use until they got
fireworks.
Yeah,
those are the good old days.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm boycotting Adobe products
As you
until
should.
I have to use it again later today for work.
It's all have to use
because it's still the best
it's like
product.
some microcosm of cancel culture.
Have either of you guys used Krita? Krita?
No.
So, there's been the GIMP,
I use
which
that, yeah.
has been Adobe-like for a long time, but they stuck with the old Adobe interface, not the new one. Right. And so it's been kind of good enough, but not like Photoshop is still better.
Photoshop has a lot more functionality.
Krita is an open source image editor that is really, really good. I've been impressed by it. Taylor A. over. Well, he showed me, and it's really Adobe's got some good competition from open source software right now.
Yeah, and there's a couple other things. So if you're like a Lightroom user and you're like, okay, I'm not paying Adobe Creative Suite or Creative Commons or whatever, they have Darktable, and there's another one called, oh man, what is that one called? I forget. Oh, Raw Therapy. That's it. Raw Therapy does a really good job. So
yeah. So in a world where there's a lot of options, if you can't tolerate the Save As functionality, well, actually, you wouldn't be able to go to them either because the Save As is common across macOS.
That's
so,
macOS.
Yep. Screw you.
Yeah. So then you move over to a real computer.
Well, if they would have to update the software, though, right?
Oh, you just install
because
Linux.
If I hadn't updated my Photoshop to the latest version, would that functionality have gone away still?
If you update macOS and don't update Photoshop, then Save As is just broken.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
It works fine on Windows though.
I mean, I believe that you can install Windows and Linux on your Mac.
Yeah.
So you can.
There's that.
Yeah, not on an M1 yet.
Photoshop and stuff doesn't.
Premiere.
The Adobe Suite doesn't work on Linux though, does it?
No.
Yeah.
So you can run it in Wine if you're crazy.
Yeah. And it's not that smooth in Windows either. But I mean, all I use it for is to put myself in like Kate Hudson's vacation photos.
As you do.
But I can do that with the. I'll try that one that Don suggested.
There you go.
Let's see if that works as well. Very cool. All right. I want to let you know about a webinar coming up called Breaking the Code of Digital Transformation, What Most Organizations Miss When Creating Digital Strategies. That is Thursday, June 3rd, and it is at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can register at itpro.tv/webinars, and while you're there, you can see all the on-demand webinars, like the one we just did on Windows Virtual Desktop last week, ISC certifications, things like that, all at itpro.tv/webinars. So check that out and head over to, I was going to say head over to technado.do, but I'm going to go ahead and say head over to technado.com because when I started to go to technado.do, it was like, this is not secure. So I'm going to talk to Don about that after this episode.
Uh-oh.
But just go to technado.com. Just go there. That works because that's where it redirects to anyway. And then I apologize to Dayon for the things that I said to you about technado.com and Croatia. And I apologize to all the people of Croatia. But yeah, head over there and you can send us a viewer mail or listener mail and let us know what stories you want us to talk about. You can see all the latest episodes. You can buy some swag that's there now, and you can click that big orange button in the corner that says sponsored by IT Pro TV, and you can get a 30% off coupon code for the lifetime of your personal plan, and also request a team trial and see all the cool features available to teams from IT Pro TV. Did technado.do work for you?
It did, so I'll have to look into why you got there.
It didn't work earlier, but now,
it's that malware he got.
Maybe now it works. Now it works. Maybe the Dominican Republic was down as a country.
Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah. So I take back my apology to Dayon and I reissue my hatred.
for all things Croatian.
Just specifically that
Just
thing.
him. Just him.
And that plum liquor they have there.
The number one export that
sounds
you
disgusting.
know of.
Yeah. The number Croatia's number one export is
Dejan.
we don't want it. I mean, he keeps just replying to me back in Microsoft Teams, so it's like I get this platform to say things about him, and he just gets to yell back at me in Teams. So
I want to like send him some malware that it just sends Teams messages to Peter. That pisses him off.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to Jorge for joining us today, talk about AWS, and we'll see you guys next week right here on Technado with Don Pizzette.